I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the envelope. It was cream-colored, thick, embossed with the firm's seal. My father had always been precise. When he said we were all taken care of, he meant it. But when I opened it, there was nothing inside. Just a blank piece of paper. No signature. No name. No legacy. Just silence. I sat there frozen, watching my mother, Karen, sip tea across the table like nothing had happened. My brother, Andrew, avoided my eyes. And my sister, Emily, was already on her phone, texting someone about vacation plans. I whispered, "Where is it?" Dad said he promised. My mother looked up slowly, cool as ever, and said, "Oh, honey, things changed. You're overreacting. It's just a piece of paper." But it wasn't. It was everything. And in that moment, I knew two things. One, my father's promises had been erased. And two, I wasn't walking away without a fight. Have you ever been erased from your own family story? Comment where you're watching from if you've ever felt like the truth was buried with someone you loved. You know, people always assume that families fall apart suddenly.
But mine?
It was like a slow leak. You don't notice until the whole house floods. My father, Richard James, was the center of everything good in my life. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But he was the kind of man who'd leave handwritten notes in my lunchbox all the way through high school. "Smile today, Liv. You're stronger than you know." He signed everything with a little heart. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Oregon, our home was this two-story craftsman house with blue shutters and a wraparound porch that always smelled like lemon pledge and fresh-cut grass. Dad ran a small law firm in town. Not the big kind, just estate planning, wills, probates. Ironic, right? He taught me how to ride a bike, how to parallel park, how to understand the difference between a good man and a loud one. I remember one night when I was maybe 11. I couldn't sleep. My room felt too big. So I tiptoed downstairs. There he was in the kitchen, wearing plaid pajama pants, hunched over paperwork with a cup of coffee and jazz playing low in the background. He looked up and smiled. "Can't sleep, sweetheart?" I shook my head. He pulled me onto his lap, wrapped a blanket around us, and said, "Whenever your mind gets loud, remind it who's in charge. You are." That became our thing. "Who's in charge, Liv?" "I am," I'd say, even when I didn't feel like it. I wish I could say my mom, Karen, was the same. But that would be lying. She was present, just not in the way you needed her to be. She had this way of smiling through disappointment. Passive-aggressive in the way only suburban mothers can be. She loved Emily more than anything. Andrew came next. And me? I was the one who asked too many questions. The one who talked back. The one who needed too much. But Dad, he always balanced her out. Every Friday, he'd pick me up from school and take me to Joe's ice cream shop. Just us two. He'd listen to me ramble about school, books, crushes. Once, I told him I wanted to be a lawyer like him. He said, "You'd be better. You've got more fire." When I went off to college in Seattle, I called him every Sunday. He never missed a call. Not once. Even when he was in the hospital for a minor surgery, he made sure to FaceTime. That's just who he was. He came to every graduation, every moving day, every heartbreak. When my engagement fell apart at 27, he was the one who drove 3 hours in the rain just to sit beside me and say nothing. Because sometimes silence is more comforting than advice. When he got sick, it wasn't sudden. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I remember the day he told me. We were sitting on the porch swing, watching the maple leaves fall. "I'm not scared," he said. "I just want to make sure you're okay. Everything's in place. I've taken care of you." I believed him, because he had never, ever lied to me. A month before he passed, he pulled me aside. We were alone in his study. Books everywhere, that same jazz station playing low in the background. He opened his drawer, pulled out a leather folder. "I revised my will," he said. "I want you to have the lake house. I know it meant a lot to you. The memories your mother and siblings agreed to it. It's all written down." I nodded, tears already forming. He placed his hand on mine. "Promise me one thing." Anything, I whispered. Don't let anyone make you question your place in this family. Not ever. I didn't realize until much later that he knew something. Something he never said out loud. Maybe he saw it coming. Maybe he was trying to protect me even from the grave. But the truth is, I never got that leather folder. After he died, I searched the house top to bottom. His study was cleaned out. His drawers were locked. My mother said, "Oh, Richard had the attorney handle everything. You don't need to stress." When I asked about the lake house, she blinked like I'd spoken in another language. What lake house? That's when the memory of that night came back. The promise. The warmth in his eyes. The way he had looked at me, like I was his world. And suddenly, I felt like a stranger in my own family. The day after Dad's funeral, the house felt hollow. Not just because he was gone, but because of how quickly everything shifted. The morning lasted maybe an hour. Then came the whispers in the hallway. The closed-door meetings between Karen and Andrew. The way Emily kept glancing at me like I was a house guest who overstayed her welcome. I stayed in my childhood room that night, and the sheets still smelled like lavender, just like Dad used to like. But everything else? It was wrong. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen where they were all seated. Mom, Andrew, Emily. They were having coffee, laughing. I stood there, still in black. Eyes swollen. Heart bruised. Did I miss something? I asked. Karen barely glanced up.
Oh, sweetheart.
Just going through some of your father's old papers. Andrew's helping me organize the financials. You don't need to worry about it. She smiled, that tight-lipped smile that never touched her eyes. Andrew didn't meet my gaze. Emily changed the subject to some boutique opening in Portland. That was the beginning. The quiet exclusion. The subtle dismissal of my presence. 3 days later, I overheard them in the study. Karen, just make sure she doesn't ask too many questions. Andrew, she won't. She's grieving. Karen, well, let's keep it that way. I froze in the hallway. Those weren't words of comfort. They were control. At the wake, people kept coming up to me. Your father spoke about you all the time. He was so proud of the work you're doing in Seattle. You were his everything. One elderly neighbor said, he told me he was leaving you the lake house. Said it was your safe place. My heart stuttered. So I asked Emily, you knew about Dad leaving me the lake house, right? She blinked. Sipped her wine. I mean, he mentioned something maybe. But I think Mom said it was too much upkeep. They probably changed the plan. Changed the plan? Since when did my dad change anything without telling me? A few days later, I visited Truman and Fields, the firm that handled Dad's estate. The receptionist was kind but cautious. I'm sorry, Miss James. Your mother instructed us not to release anything without her present. My jaw tightened. But I'm his daughter. She has power of attorney over the estate's execution. I left the building with more questions than answers, and a knot in my stomach that wouldn't untangle. That night, I searched the house again. I went into Dad's study after everyone was asleep. It smelled like dust and worn leather. His favorite books were still there, untouched. But the drawer where he had once placed that leather folder? Empty. No papers. No keys. Just a single pen. His favorite one. Gold tip. Engraved with his initials. RJ. I picked it up and sat there for an hour.
Silent.
Trying to hear his voice in the stillness. 2 days later, Karen had a locksmith change the locks on the study. I just think we need to preserve his space. Too many people touching things, she said with a wave of her hand.
Too many people? There was only me.
Then came the dinner. It was a small gathering, just us and a few close friends. I brought up the will again, gently. Has anyone seen the updated version? Dad told me he made changes. Karen's fork clinked against her plate. She didn't look up. Andrew cleared his throat. Olivia, maybe this isn't the time. It is the time, I said, sharper than I meant. He told me, he left me the lake house, that it was in writing. Silence.
Karen finally looked at me. Calm.
Controlled. Olivia, people say a lot of things when they're dying. My chest cracked. You think he lied? She dabbed her mouth with a napkin. I think grief makes memories blurry. Let's not turn this into something ugly. I stared at her, and for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not as my mother, not as the woman who decorated Christmas trees with perfect precision, but as someone who was hiding something. Emily stood up. I'm not staying for this. Andrew followed her without a word. I sat there, staring into cold mashed potatoes, heart pounding. Karen took a sip of wine and said, "You always were the dramatic one." From that point on, they began icing me out completely. Emails from the law firm were never copied to me. Andrew took over financial responsibilities. Emily posted Instagram stories of brunches with captions like "Family First," with me nowhere in sight. I went back to the firm. This time, I asked for Logan Fields, the senior partner. He remembered me from when I was a kid. "Olivia," he said gently, "your dad was very proud of you. He talked about you all the time." "Then why am I being shut out?" He hesitated. "Because your father's final amendments never made it into the filed version. They were discussed but not signed. Your mother insisted everything be kept to the original." My stomach dropped. "But he told me." "I believe you," Logan said. "But without a signed copy legally." He trailed off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling in the guest room, Dad's voice echoing in my mind. "Don't let anyone make you question your place in this family." I whispered into the dark. "I'm not. I'm going to find the truth, Dad. I promise." The day it all truly shattered was a Tuesday, 6 weeks after the funeral. Gray skies, biting cold, and an inbox notification that would change everything. I was at a cafe in Seattle, sipping a bitter coffee that I couldn't taste. I'd been emailing back and forth with Logan Fields, desperately trying to get something, anything, that confirmed what my father told me. Then it came. "We've located a digital backup of your father's final draft. It's dated, timestamped, and saved in our server, but it lacks a physical signature." I remember the way my hands went cold. I clicked the attachment. There it was, my name clear as day. "To my daughter Olivia, I leave the Cedar Lake property, as discussed. She has shown unwavering loyalty and compassion beyond measure." I read that line over and over, until the words blurred. He remembered. He meant it. He chose me. I called Logan instantly. He answered in that calm, measured tone. "We can pursue it. It won't be easy, Olivia. Your mother is claiming the original was never finalized. But this gives us something." I barely remember the rest of the call. Only that by the end of it, my decision was made. I was going to fight. But first, I had to confront my family. I drove back to Cedar Falls that weekend. Didn't tell anyone I was coming. I parked outside her house. The porch light was off, the windows dark. But inside, voices, laughter, clinking glasses. I let myself in. It was still technically my home. They were all in the dining room, Karen, Andrew, Emily. Toasting wine, passing dishes, like nothing had ever happened. When they saw me, the air shifted. Karen stood. "Olivia, we weren't expecting you." "I bet," I said, stepping in. Andrew cleared his throat. "We're having dinner. Maybe now's not the time." "It is exactly the time." I took the printed draft from my bag and placed it on the table, right in front of Karen's wine glass. She didn't touch it. Didn't even flinch. I said, voice low but steady. "He did leave it to me. The lake house." He wrote it down. He meant it. Karen smiled. It was the same smile she wore at the funeral.
Tight. Polished. Performed.
"That's not a signed will, Olivia. It's a draft.
Saved.
Timestamped. Filed by his attorney. Still not legally binding," she said, like it was a script she'd memorized. Emily shifted in her seat. Andrew wouldn't meet my eyes. I turned to them. "You both knew, didn't you? You knew what he wanted. You knew what he promised." Emily looked away. Andrew opened his mouth, then closed it again.
I pointed at the draft.
"He called me loyal, compassionate. He trusted me." Karen took a sip of her wine. "He also trusted me to do what's best for the family. And keeping everything intact, without conflict, is what's best." I laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You're not protecting the family. You're stealing from it. Silence. Karen's voice dropped. You've always been the outsider, Olivia. You think just because you were Daddy's favorite, you deserve everything. I stared at her, and suddenly the truth snapped into focus. It had never been about the will. It was about control. Punishment. She couldn't handle the fact that I was the one he loved most. I left that night and went straight to Logan's office. I walked in shaking. He saw my face, closed the door, and said, "Let's begin." What followed was weeks of paperwork, consultations, and case reviews. We couldn't sue for the full estate, but we could contest the distribution. Logan found inconsistencies in the previous filings, documents backdated, files missing, financial transfers made within days of Dad's passing. He used words like probate fraud, undue influence, testamentary intent. All I could think about was Dad's face. His eyes that night on the porch. Don't let anyone make you question your place. Karen's legal team pushed back. They painted me as emotionally unstable. A daughter disconnected from the family. One who only came home for inheritance. I sat in a deposition room for 7 hours while their lawyer grilled me. Were you present when the will was signed? Do you have any physical copy in your possession? Did your father ever express dissatisfaction with the family dynamic? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I held my ground. The breaking point came when Logan subpoenaed email records. One in particular, an exchange between Karen and Andrew, dated 2 days after Dad's death. Karen wrote, "Get the study cleaned out before Olivia starts snooping. She's always been sentimental. She'll look for something." That was it. That was the moment the judge agreed to reopen the estate distribution hearing. Court was brutal. Karen showed up in pearls and grief. Emily cried on the stand, said she didn't remember anything about the lake house. Andrew froze when asked about the document disposal. And me? I brought Dad's pen. That gold-tipped pen. I placed it on the table as I testified. This was his. The night he gave me that draft, this was in his hand. He told me to remember who I am, to never let anyone take that from me. When the hearing ended, the judge didn't decide right away. It took weeks. Weeks of silence. Of waiting. Then finally an email. Partial distribution granted. The Cedar Lake property will be transferred to Ms. Olivia James, pending final registration. I stared at the screen. I laughed. I cried. I collapsed to the floor, knees shaking. Not because of the house, but because someone finally said I wasn't crazy. That my memory, my truth, was valid. The official transfer papers for the lake house arrived on a Thursday morning. Heavy envelope. Gold seal. My name on every page. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Not until I faced her. That Sunday, I went back to the house in Cedar Falls. The same porch where I once played jacks with Dad was now covered in dead leaves. I rang the doorbell. Karen opened the door, flawless as ever, cashmere sweater, pearls, perfect lipstick. She didn't smile. "Olivia." "Hi, Mom." She stepped aside, but said nothing. The silence between us was thicker than ever. I walked into the living room. Same beige couch. Same spotless fireplace mantel. Dad's photo, once centered, was now on the far left, almost hidden behind a vase. I sat down. She remained standing. "I got the house," I said plainly. She blinked. "I know," she replied. No apology. No surprise. Just that flat, performative calm. I placed the envelope on the coffee table. "You knew what he wanted. You erased it anyway." Karen sighed, sat across from me. "It was complicated. You weren't here. You don't understand how things were falling apart." "Falling apart for you?" I snapped. "He was dying. I was losing him. And you made it about you." She leaned forward, her voice low. "Calculated. Don't pretend you were some saint. You left. You started your life far away and only showed up when things went bad." I swallowed the hurt. I called every week. I visited every holiday. I held his hand while you complained about medical bills and hospice care being bad for the aesthetic. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You always had a flair for drama." No, Mom, I said, my voice trembling but clear. What I had was a father who actually saw me.
She stood.
Well, you got what you wanted. The lake house is yours.
So what now?
You want me to beg for forgiveness?
I paused.
Then slowly pulled a small wooden box from my bag. It was Dad's keepsake box. I'd found it tucked behind the lake house furnace during the cleanup. Inside was a faded letter, his wedding band, and a tiny sketch of me at age 6, my first day of school, holding his hand. I slid the letter across the table. Karen stared at it like it was poison. I read it, I said. It was for you. But I think he knew I'd find it. She picked it up, hesitant. Karen, I know you never liked how much time I gave Olivia. I know you always felt she was the difficult one. But she's the one who stayed honest. Who loved without agenda.
I hope you find peace with that. Love.
Richard. Karen's hand trembled. She folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the box. I never hated her, she whispered. I looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time saw a flicker of something real. Not control. Not smugness. Just a woman who'd lost control and couldn't admit it. I don't need an apology, I said.
Karen looked up, eyes glassy.
Then why are you here? To tell you that I'm done trying to earn love I never had to beg for. I stood. That house, it's not just bricks and wood. It's his memory, his love, and it will be protected, with or without your blessing. She said nothing, just watched me walk away. Outside, the wind was sharp, but it felt different this time, less like a storm, more like clarity. That week, I reached out to Emily and Andrew. They didn't respond, but Emily's husband, Josh, called me. Quietly. She's embarrassed, he said, and angry, but deep down she knows you were right.
I didn't know what to say.
So I just said, tell her I'm not mad, just done playing the outsider. A month later, I hosted a remembrance gathering at the lake house. Not for legal victory. For Dad. I invited his old college friends, the jazz club members, even his barber of 20 years. We lit candles. Played his favorite Coltrane record. I read aloud a few of his notes and letters. There was laughter. There were tears. And when it ended, a woman named Beatrice, his childhood friend, pulled me aside. He used to say you were his compass, she said. No matter where he was, you always pointed him home. As I stood on the dock, watching the sun melt over the lake, I whispered, I kept my promise, Dad. Not just to fight, but to remember, to reclaim, to finally stand tall. The lake house was quiet after everyone left. Too quiet. I stood in the doorway of the guest room, staring at the neatly made bed, the old oak dresser, the framed photograph of Dad fishing in his college hoodie. And it hit me. He wasn't coming back. The war was over. But the ache was just beginning. Grief doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it hums in the background like a power line.
Constant.
Invisible. Buzzing behind everything. The house was mine. But the family? That was a different story. Emily still hadn't returned my texts. Andrew had unfollowed me on Instagram. Yes, that was the level of pettiness. Karen stayed silent. For weeks. No phone calls. No messages. Just nothing. It was like I had died too. I spent days sorting through Dad's things at the lake house. Box by box. I found cassette tapes of him reading bedtime stories he recorded for me when I was away at college. Letters I wrote him in crayon. Old ties. His wedding watch. Receipts from dinners he had with me after my first breakup. Clippings of my college graduation announcement. Even the program from my failed engagement, tucked inside a journal with a note that read, She'll love again. She always rises. That's when the dam broke. I sat on the floor of the study and sobbed into his old flannel shirt, breathing in the faded scent of cedar and aftershave. I wasn't crying for the house, or the betrayal. I was mourning the version of my family I thought I had. The warm Christmases. The laughter at dinner. The shared memories. Because somewhere along the line, I had mistaken proximity for connection. The neighborhood had noticed too. Mrs. Larson, the 80-year-old neighbor from across the lake, brought over fresh pie one afternoon. She sat beside me, silent at first. Then she said, "I saw how they treated you at the funeral. I've seen it for years." I looked at her, stunned. She nodded. "You were always his favorite. Not because he loved the others less, but because you were the only one who loved him for who he was." The words stuck with me. Still, I couldn't stop the spiral. What if the judge had ruled differently? What if I hadn't fought? Would they have just erased me? Would Dad's memory have been rewritten without me in it? I started therapy 2 weeks later. A friend in Seattle recommended Dr. Camille Brooks, sharp, compassionate, no nonsense. On the first day, I said, "I feel like my grief is layered. It's not just death. It's betrayal. From the people who were supposed to love me." She nodded. "You're grieving 2 deaths," she said. "Your father, and the illusion of a family." We dug deep. Into childhood. Into Karen's patterns of favoritism. How Emily was always coddled. How Andrew got away with everything. And how I became the strong one so early that no one ever asked if I needed help. I remembered moments I had buried. Karen laughing when I said I wanted to go to law school. That's a man's field, Liv. Andrew getting a car for graduation, while I got a congratulations card. Emily crying her way out of trouble, while I was called dramatic for crying at all. It was all there. Tiny slights. Paper cuts. Until I bled out. One night, around 2 a.m., I sat on the dock in a hoodie, bare feet in the cold water. Stars above. Crickets humming. Silence. And I whispered aloud, "Dad, I'm okay. I really am. But I miss the version of you that protected me from them." And, for the first time, it didn't feel like a plea. It felt like a truth I could finally carry on my own. That fall, I started painting again. Just for me. Watercolors at first, soft, bleeding skies. Then oils, bold, chaotic, fierce. I filled the studio room at the lake house with canvases. Some messy, some haunting, some healing. I called it my grief gallery. Neighbors began stopping by. A girl named Jasmine, who lost her mom to breast cancer, started coming every Saturday to paint with me. A widower named Carl brought his grandson and helped me fix the broken fence out back. Bit by bit, a new family was forming. Not the one I was born into,
but one that chose me.
Then one day, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a photo of me and Dad at Joe's ice cream shop. I was 12. He was laughing. I was mid-bite. On the back, in Dad's handwriting, "She'll always be the best part of me." No note. No explanation. I never found out who sent it, but maybe I didn't need to. It's strange how healing doesn't come all at once. It's not a moment. It's a collection of tiny, almost invisible steps. Some days I woke up feeling light. Others, I couldn't breathe without the weight of memory pressing on my chest. But still, I moved forward. The lake house slowly began to change. The walls, once painted beige and muted, became color. Lavender in the bedroom. Deep navy in the study. The porch swing got a new chain. Dad's old records played from a vintage speaker I found at a yard sale. It was no longer the house I inherited. It became the home I chose to make. On Sundays, I started hosting quiet coffee mornings. No invites, just an open door. Neighbors would drift in. Jasmine, the teenager who painted beside me, brought her sketchbooks and stories. Carl came by with crossword puzzles and a thermos of spiced tea. Beatrice, Dad's old friend, showed up with her dog, Leo, who instantly became part of the lake house's rhythm. We talked about everything. And nothing.
Grief. Books.
Favorite songs. Lost spouses. Found strength. One Sunday, Beatrice leaned over and said, "You've turned this house into a sanctuary." I smiled. That's what Dad wanted. A place that remembers but still breathes. I started journaling again. Therapy had opened the door, but writing was how I walked through it. Every night, I wrote 1 page. Sometimes angry. Sometimes grateful. Sometimes both. I wrote to Dad. to Karen, to the girl I used to be. And one night, I wrote a letter I never thought I'd write. Dear Emily, I know we may never speak again. I know you think I took something from you, but the truth is, I never wanted to win. I just wanted to be seen, and heard, and loved. Maybe one day, you'll understand that. I'll be here if that day ever comes. Until then, I forgive you. Love, Olivia. I didn't send it. I didn't have to. It wasn't for her. It was for me. Healing, I learned, isn't about fixing everything. It's about no longer needing to. I began teaching art classes on the weekends, free for kids who'd lost a parent. The community center gave me space. Local stores donated supplies. One little boy, Jaden, painted his father as a superhero with a giant heart. When I asked him why, he said, because he loved me loud. And I thought of my dad, and smiled. Then one rainy morning, as I walked out to the mailbox in my robe, I saw a car parked on the road. A silver SUV. Windows tinted. Engine off. And just as I reached the gate, the driver's side door opened. Emily stepped out. Same long coat. Same hesitant smile. We stood in silence. Then she said, I saw your letter. Josh found it in your art journal when he visited the house. He showed me. My throat tightened. I didn't mean for anyone to. I'm glad he did, she said. Another pause. She looked away. I was jealous, she whispered. You were everything he loved about this family. And I hated that I wasn't enough. I wanted to be angry, to scream. But all I felt was tired.
And something else. Peace.
I didn't want his love to be a competition, I said softly. I just didn't want to be erased. Emily nodded. Then, tears in her eyes, she said, I'm sorry, Liv. For all of it. And for the first time in years, I saw my sister again. Not the distant, dismissive woman who sat at the dinner table with a phone in her hand, but the girl who once shared a bunk bed with me and braided my hair on the first day of school. We didn't hug. We didn't say much else. But when she drove away, I knew something had shifted. Not everything, but enough. That night, I stood on the dock, wind blowing through my sweater. I looked up at the stars and whispered,
Thank you, Dad.
For the fight, for the love, for the legacy. And in the stillness, I felt something like an answer. Healing isn't a place you arrive at. It's a home you build inside yourself. And finally, I was home. If you made it this far, thank you. I didn't tell this story to get sympathy. I told it because someone out there, maybe you, needs to hear it. Maybe you've lost someone you loved. Maybe your grief has been complicated by betrayal, silence, or the quiet ache of feeling unseen. Maybe you're the one still waiting for an apology that may never come. And maybe, like me, you're realizing that healing isn't about waiting for others to see your worth. It's about remembering you never needed their permission to matter in the first place. I used to think family meant blood. Now I know. Family is who shows up. Family is who tells the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Family is who says, I see you. I hear you. You matter. If no one has said that to you lately, let me be the first. You matter. Your voice, your grief, your story. Some of you may be watching this and thinking, I've been Olivia. I've sat at a table where everyone acted like I didn't exist. I've been shut out of what should have been mine. To you I say, you are not alone. There's a silent army of us, people who've carried pain and still chose to love, who've been excluded but still showed up, who've lost everything and rebuilt anyway. You're not broken. You're brave. And I hope you know, it's not weak to feel the weight of grief. It's not wrong to want answers. And it's not dramatic to want the truth. If this story moved you, comment below. Tell me what your lake house is. What's that one thing you were told you didn't deserve, but deep down knew was meant for you? Share your story. Let's create a space where the unheard get heard, where we say the hard things, where we remember that love isn't just soft, it's strong. And if you're still in the middle of your story, fighting to be seen, to be respected, to be remembered, hold on. You're not done yet. I'll leave you with this. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say isn't, I forgive you.
Sometimes it's
I remember who I am. And that's enough. If this story helped you, subscribe. There's more to come. More truths to tell. More hearts to reach. And if no one's told you lately, you're doing better than you think. And you're not alone anymore.